Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session in Track 1. My name is Vaughan Waller. I'm your chair for the next 3 sessions in this room, although I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm the chair for the Track 1. There's a correction, which I shall tell you about at the end of the session. Today we're going to talk, in this session, we're going to talk about, as you've seen and read probably 100 times already, digital learning futures. And as you all know, myself included, as one of the track chairs, we're all invited to write some articles for the magazine. And my humble offering in the show guide that you've all got refers to the time when, many years ago, I was cutting my teeth in learning technologies, supporting organisations that used generic e-learning modules in what they called at the time a learning resource centre and other names. At the time, that was really cutting-edge stuff, but at that point, we had no idea what was going to be available in the future. And we've got the situation now where the choices available to us are incredible by comparison. I mean, who cares what happened before? We all want to know what's going to happen in the future. We're on this sort of non-stop technological sleigh ride of technological advancements, which shows no signs of getting any slower. In fact, probably a lot quicker. And to give us the heads up on what's about to happen and how it will affect us and the way we learn and the way we use learning in the workplace, we have Steve Wheeler, who is Associate Professor of Learning Technology at Plymouth University, which of course it says up on the screen, so I had no need to say that anyway. He is going to ply us with ideas and inspiration on what to do next. So enough from me, let me hand over to Steve Wheeler.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Is this working fine, or is it cutting out? Technology, eh? Hello, can you... Well, I'll shout, I'll use my teacher's voice. Good morning to you all. Funny thing happened to me on the way to the theatre today. Have you noticed the lift operators, for Americans, the elevator operators? Have you noticed them? They press the buttons as you come up and down, and it's not often a gentleman ruffles in my pocket and I get away with it without being arrested. But is that better? I should be fine. That's better. Yeah. Okay. Right. And I noticed this one particular lift operator. He was rather miserable. Straight-faced, no matter what anyone said to him, he just straight-faced, So I thought, I'll crack a smile. I'll try and crack a smile. So I said to him, you're going up up and down all day, aren't you? Going up and down all day? He said, yeah. I said, don't you get bored? He said, yeah, it's very boring. Up and down all day. I said, there's a patron saint of ups and downs? He said, what's that then? I said, St. Francis of Assisi. He looked at me and he said, floor 3, sir. So it didn't work, did it? I mean, but at least I had a go to try. This session is really, as Vaughan says, all about futures. But I know people think I'm daft as a brush, but I'm not daft enough to try and predict the future, because you can't predict the future. What you can do, though, is you can see some of the trends. And this first image here is actually quite an interesting one. I kind of borrowed this one because I thought this says a lot, but it doesn't say very much, actually. It does say a lot when you look at the image, and it's quite evocative, because what it's doing is it's trying to show you that the brain can connect. If you were in Jaron Lanier's session earlier on, you'll hear what he was saying about networks and connections and about how people interact with each other using technology. Well, we're going to try and take that a step further in terms of learning and in terms of your context as a learning professional. So if you think about connections as the first digital future, I'm not talking about one future. I'm going to be talking about several alternatives. That's why we've got the word futures plural here, because there are lots of possibilities open to us. And I just want to explore some of them with you this morning in the time we've got, and then try to get you thinking, challenge you maybe, challenge myself too, and maybe have some dialogue at the end. I think afterwards there's also a session downstairs where we can continue this discussion if any of you want to be involved in that. So that's the plan. So To look forward, we really need to start looking back in the first instance. We need to start seeing where we've come from first. Here's an idea for you. You know that your badge that you're wearing allows you to get into the Learning Without Frontiers exhibition as well, where they've got all these domes. Who's been down there? Only about 30 of you, 20 of you. If you're interested in the past and you're interested in the history of where we've come from, there's a wonderful stand down there called the National Museum of Computing. And in there are the BBC Basic computers with the Humana disk drives and the Microvitec chunky monitors. Remember those? So if you want some nostalgia, not neuralgia, that's what Don Taylor's got. Nostalgia, all right? If you want nostalgia, go down there and have a look. And it will take you back a few years, maybe to the 80s, and you can revel in what used to be if you were into that at the time. So we need to know where we've come from to see where we're going to. And what I once talked about back in the 80s was that the future was going to be multimedia. And it was true because multimedia at the time really did bring the world into the classroom, into the training room, so to speak. You could bring all sorts of experiences from multimedia into the classroom. And people could experience it without having to necessarily go to these places to visit them in the first instance. That was quite an important leap. But then 10 years on, someone asked me in a conference in Berlin, when I was on a panel, they said, what do you think the future's going to be? And I said, it's got to be the web now, because I could see the trends pointing towards that, and that's exactly what we saw happening. So I was kind of quite lucky there that I predicted, but I could see the trends. But then, a couple of years ago when I was speaking here, I said, I think the future's going to be smart mobile. And the reason I thought that is because what it does is it flips what we did with multimedia all those years ago. When multimedia brought the world into the classroom, smart tech will take the classroom back out into the world again. In so many ways. It's untethered. It's part of the future. But we can go even farther than that. And I just want to show you this infographic here, which is a really clever infographic. If you missed the internet for 60 seconds, what would you miss if you switched it off for 60 seconds? I'll just point out some of these for you. In 60 seconds on the internet, there's nearly 700,000 inquiries on Google, search engine inquiries. There are 1,500 new blog posts. Most of them are rubbish, but in there occasionally there are some very good ones. Same with YouTube. Where's the YouTube statistic? I'll quote it to you later on, but YouTube is incredible because there are more than 24 hours of video being uploaded onto YouTube every minute. And that's quite an incredible statistic. Here's a really interesting one. Only one new article is published every minute somewhere in the world. I mean, I'm talking paper-based articles here, chapters in books or journal articles or magazine articles. So only one of those is published every minute. That should show you where the trends are going to start with. That should give you some ideas about what we need to start thinking about and coping with as learning development professionals. So I won't labour that, I'll just move on. Here's social media use, which is, kind of the reasons why all that data and all the content is being generated. Facebook, currently just over 800 million active subscribers. Tumblr, 170 million. That's a kind of a blogging type service, if you're not interested in it. MySpace, another social media tool, 260 million at the moment. That's stalled, that one. Who's a member of MySpace? Not many of you, I would imagine. Maybe three of you. Who's a member of Facebook? Forest of hands. What about Twitter? Again, a forest of hands. Last year, that wasn't the case here. There were more Facebook members than Twitter members. What about LinkedIn? Again, that's quite a popular one amongst professionals. Wikipedia, just over 14 million articles currently in existence on Wikipedia. That's in English. There are at least 85 other languages covered as well. Flickr, 4 billion plus images currently available on Flickr, and that's obviously growing all the time. And the same with YouTube, as I mentioned earlier on. Interestingly, yesterday, I think it was, I'm trying to remember who it was that spoke yesterday, both here and downstairs. Who was it? It was the futurologist. Give me his name. You were paying attention. It was Ray Kurzweil. And I heard him downstairs yesterday. He said something very important. He said, change is not constant, it's exponential. That's what we're dealing with now. So we're dealing with two things really, two problems. The first is we've got exponential change going on. which we're having to cope with and having to rapidly run to keep pace with, just to stand still. And secondly, we're trying to prepare learners, students, trainees for a future that we cannot clearly describe yet. That's the second big deal that we have to cope with. And we put those two together, how are we going to cope? It sounds like a monstrous, set of possibilities. This is a very clever infographic as well from Ken Robinson, which I've tried to put into chart form. In the book last year that he brought out of Their Minds, he said, what if we took 3,000 years and compressed it down to 24 hours? This is the kind of developments that we're looking at. And this is where we talk about the exponential change. Everything's bunching up, and suddenly things are changing faster than we can keep up with them. And in the last few minutes, we've seen the Gutenberg printing press transmogrifying into various other types of communications technologies, like Morse code, telephone, radio, television, all the way down to only 1 second ago, 3D television. Who's actually got a 3D television, just as a matter of interest? Not many of you, and you're putting your hands up like that. It's almost as if you don't want other people to know, because it might come around. Yeah. But I think that's rather interesting, that graphic, in its own right, because it shows the concatenation of innovations that are happening because of this change momentum that's going on. So, if we've looked at where we were, let's look at where we are now and see what's happening. I see this kind of thing happening. Because I'm a psychologist and a social scientist, I look at the way people behave. And I see a lot of stuff happening where people are kind of becoming tribes on the internet, on the web. And they're behaving differently in different contexts. So for instance, the Flickerite tribe is different to the Facebooker tribe, which is different again to the Wikipedian tribe. They've all got different traits and characteristics, but you can be a member of all those tribes. You just change your identity each time. Or you change the way you represent yourself online. So that's interesting, because that's happening a lot. So for instance, on Flickr, you get a different type of personality than you do on Facebook. On Facebook, most people are their own picture. They show a picture of themselves, they use their real name, and they show pictures of their family and friends, and they connect with people that reasonably they know and they're familiar with. On Flickr, it's different. They're often using a picture that represents them but isn't really them. They're often using names that aren't their own names, as well as pseudonyms, and they're often showing photographs, and it's the photograph that becomes the digital totem, if you like, which the tribe gathers around to discuss. So they're kind of gathering around an artifact rather than an idea. And the ideas come from the artifact. So there are all sorts of interesting kind of nuances there within these different social media as we see them happening. Another thing that we're seeing more is a burgeoning of user-generated content. And everybody, as you've seen, seems to be generating content now. When you write a Twitter tweet, even though it's 140 characters less, that's still content, and it's out there. And it can be seen by other people. And it can be changed or used. You'll notice that on every one of my slides, I've got a CC on the right-hand side there. I'm also wearing one. This is Creative Commons. Someone asked me yesterday, what does the CC stand for? I said, well, it's Creative Commons. Who knows actually what Creative Commons is? So, well, I'll enlighten the rest of you then. It's a way of getting around content copyright on the internet. If you want to make your content available for free to other people to use, and there are reasons for doing that, then there are various forms of licensing under Creative Commons that you can slap onto your content so that other people will see it and then use it for free if they like it. So my slides, for instance, here, and my blog posts, and anything else I create on YouTube or on Flickr or whatever, I put a CC license on it for attribution, which means that you can use it, but you just say that it came from me, so you put my name on it, and that's my reward. Also, you can repurpose it, meaning you can take parts of it and use it in another context, or you can translate it into another language. Lots of my blog posts have been translated into Spanish, for instance, which gives me a huge other population of readers out there in the South American continent, which I wouldn't have had otherwise. I've even got one on here, look. So you can take a picture of me without my permission. And you can repurpose me. Just don't put the head of Ed Miliband on me or something. No, don't want that. But so when you see CC, that's what it means. And increasingly, we're going to see a lot of user-generated content with free and open use on it, fair use on it. Share and share alike, as it's called. And that means you should look out for this, because there's lots of content out there now which you can use without having to worry about copyright or paying for it. It's free and open and easy to use. For instance, if you want to find an image on Flickr that is free and open to use, you go into the image search on Flickr, and then you go into the advanced search. Normally you'll find it on the top right-hand corner, a little cog picture, or what do they call it? An icon. Icon, that's it, yeah. I'm tired from last night, that's the problem. And when you click on the icon, it will ask you for advanced search. You click on advanced search, and then you shuffle down the page, and you'll find where it says use images that are for reuse, for free reuse. Click onto that, and it'll give you a whole other set of images, probably less than the main search, but it'll give you a whole lot of images which you can then copy and use for free in your own presentations. So these images here, for instance, have all been found by me, and they're being repurposed for free. I think that we're going to look at more mobile and personalized learning. The two seem to go hand in hand. You've got a device, it's yours, it's personal, you can personalize it. But I think there's going to be personalization. Come in. There's going to be personalization as well in terms of everything that we do on the web and everything that we do with our mobile technologies and so on. We're going to see more of that. And we're looking at ubiquitous communications now and connections. Are you familiar with this picture? Can you see what it is? Someone said Obama. That's right. There's Obama down the bottom there. This is Berlin, back just before he got elected as president. And can you see what the people are doing there in the background? That's the important bit. Yeah, there are loads of them with their mobile phones or their cameras up taking photographs. And there's even a couple of guys here with laptops working, live streaming. You know? Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? You know, if up closer, you probably can see a little bit more. But the interesting thing about that is that they're connecting, not with the people that are there, but they're connecting with people that they care about who are elsewhere and cannot be there. And that means something quite significant to the people who aren't there. I mean, all the media from the world were there, and everyone was watching live pictures of him giving the speech in Berlin. But that's not a connection, that's just broadcast. A connection is when you know someone who's there within touching distance almost of the guy, and history's being made, and they're sharing a picture with you and saying, look, I'm here, share the picture with me, share the moment with me. This, to me, is part of the future of social learning, because it's about connecting with people in a realistic and authentic way. And I think I showed this last time I was here, either in June or in January last year. I wanted to just show you this kind of topographic map of where we are and where we're going. If you can imagine that the first web, when it first came out, it was very much about containing a lot of information. It was connecting information together. If you can imagine on the bottom axis here, we've got degrees of social connectivity. And on the other axis going up the side, you've got degrees of information connectivity. Okay? This is very low in both. You couldn't do much with it, you couldn't change it, and you had to take what the information was being given to you by the webmaster who was controlling it. Then along comes Web 2, as we start calling it now, or the social web. That started to connect people. That started happening around about 10 years ago. But it gathered pace around about 2006, 2007. That's when it started to gather pace. So in effect, we were going along this axis here, but it wasn't any more in terms of information richness. So we have now to start thinking about Web 3, which we start calling the semantic web, or there's other names for it as well, which is starting to connect knowledge together. And you see this in terms of it's artificial intelligence systems that kind of try to predict what you want next. But the trajectory we really need is to go through both. So really what we're having to try and find here now is what I'm calling Web X.0, what I'm calling the extended web, if you like, which is where we're mixing and mashing up both of those connectivities so that we're providing both social and information richness for everybody who's using it. And you're starting to see that emerging in things like recommender systems, like Amazon. You know, Amazon, you buy a book on Amazon and it says, oh, do you know that 26 other people who bought that book bought this book? And suddenly you've got a book in front of you that you didn't even know you wanted, but you want it now. you know, because it's been recommended to you by 26 other people that you trusted. Yeah? So this is the kind of the start of this kind of intelligence. Can you imagine how that would transform our online learning and the processes that we could go through, the pedagogies behind that? So there's something for you to think about. How can we harness the power of that as it emerges and as it gathers pace? This is what's coming next, I think. It's the R factor. I've got to put a cuteness in there somewhere. Like, go on, you might as well go R. Go on, what you want to. This is a story, all right, which appeared on my blog recently. It's not my own story, but I've repurposed it. And it's a story about a chihuahua that it's taken on holiday with its owner, and the owner goes to Africa on a safari holiday, right? And there will be a point to this story in a minute, you'll see. And the Chihuahua's a very intelligent dog, but he's also very wayward. He's very headstrong, right? And the dog runs off into the bush one day and runs smack bang into a hungry lion. He sees the lion coming and thinks, oh, sugar, I'm in trouble. And so he thinks on his feet. He sees a pile of bones and he turns with his back to the lion and starts gnawing at the bones. And the lion is about to pounce on him. And the little Chihuahua says with a loud voice, "That was a really tasty lion. I wonder if there's any more around here." And the lion stops in his tracks and slinks back away into the jungle and tries to hide and walks away and thinks, that was a lucky escape. That dog nearly had me there. Stupid lion, you see. There's a monkey in the tree that sees this, and the monkey thinks, that's interesting. I might be able to score a few points here with that lion because he's powerful, you know. Let's get some alliances going here. So the monkey sees what's happening, goes off and tells the lion, says, you know, that dog had you for a mug there. He's not really eating the lion, he just saw the bones and, you know, it's all a charade. And the lion thinks, right, okay, gets angry, says, come back with me, ride on my back, monkey, because I'm going to show you how I deal with people who make a mug out of me. So he goes back and he sees the dog again, the dog sees him coming, turns around to the bones again, and as the lion gets closer, looks up and says, no, that monkey's been gone a long time. I sent him off to get me another lion. I wonder where he is. The point of that story, if you think about it, there's all sorts of things that you could draw out of that story. Thinking on your feet, you know, problem solving, creativity, intelligence, productivity, you know, competitiveness. There's all sorts of things you could draw out from that story. But the interesting thing is, I want to dwell on the idea of creative thinking for a minute. Because that, to me, is also the future of learning. We've got to start getting people thinking creatively if we're going to start getting them to be able to solve problems that will meet the challenges that we don't even know are coming our way yet. Whatever the threat or the opportunity might be, we need learners who will be in the workplace, who will be able to respond, be adaptable, and be able to think creatively on their feet when the need arises. Margaret Bowden said a really interesting thing about creativity. She said creativity is actually the ability to come up with something that is new and surprising, but which is also useful. And that, to me, is a very good definition of creativity. And it's something that we see sadly lacking in a lot of our training programs these days. But it needs to be injected in there. You see, the thing is, there's a lot of surface learning that goes on, but we've got to try and get the learner to think more deeply if they're going to contextualize their learning and then apply it effectively and creatively to situations that will arise which they don't expect and which are unpredictable. The future is unpredictable, but we've got to be able to respond to it. So if you think of it in terms of engagement, if you think at the very top, very surface type of learning, to use a computer analogy, is very similar to data, which then becomes information as it becomes more useful, because it gets invested with some kind of cognitive energy. And then you start to think about it more and it becomes knowledge, and then perhaps it becomes wisdom. And then finally, it may become some kind of transformatory experience which you can then apply in any situation, because you've got that problem analog, and therefore there's a problem with another similar space coming along, and you can just adapt that solution to another problem. That's the kind of thing, surely, that you'd like to see your learners gaining and acquiring, isn't it? That kind of skill. So, if you think about knowledge, then wisdom, transformation as a kind of a continuum, knowledge is very much about knowing that something is, whereas, you know, it's declarative. You can say it, and because you know it. Wisdom is more about knowing how in many ways. It's what I would call procedural. It's a bit like skills, because you've had experience and you can apply what you already know to other situations, and you can see the similarity or the difference between them. But finally, transformation is really knowing why, and that for me is much more critical. And if you were to apply something like Bloom's taxonomy to this, you really start thinking about knowledge and understanding, or the cognition of it, at the top level there. And then as you apply it, and it comes down a bit deeper, and then finally you can analyse and evaluate it. That, to me, is a kind of a sequence that we should be using our digital tools to promulgate. That, to me, is the way I would see any training program being designed in that kind of style. It's going to be effective anyway. I show these because, you know, you can ask the difference between knowledge and wisdom, and knowledge is kind of knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing you don't put it in a fruit salad, you know. But then you need to know why you don't put it in a fruit salad, which is the critical aspect of that. So you know, there's the 3 layers for you. So I just thought I'd throw that one in. But we're also going to see a lot of convergence. We're going to see a lot of things joining together, I think. The trends are already there. You know it. You've seen it. You only have to watch BBC Click on television to see the convergences that are going on in various different types of digital products. Dual View TV. Have you seen that, anyone? It's a bit like the Nintendo DS 3DS screen, where you've got 2 different planes going on here. But this is actually not physical. This is actually where 2 people can watch 2 different programs on the same television screen. So you and your missus don't have to bust up anymore about watching a program about football, which she wants to watch, and you want to watch a program about cookery or whatever, you know. Notice I switched the gender there, because I'm more interested in cookery than my wife is. But you see, the thing is, you can actually both watch the same program a different program at the same time, but you just use a different set of spectacles which switch at a different rate. And in effect, you've both got the ability to watch your own program then. So no more fighting over the channel switcher anymore. That could be interesting in terms of experiences when you apply it to learning. I'm sure you could think about possibilities there. Another thing that we're seeing happening now is what we call gamification. And who's heard of that? You familiar with that? The idea that you can take the principles of games and apply them to learning in different contexts. Or you can take games and use them for learning. So, for instance, I know of a group of nuns in the Philippines who are using Grand Theft Auto with their students to teach them citizenship. That's true. That's absolutely true. Check it out. It's on the web for you to find. There are lots of ways that you can use games. The thing about games is that it's not about the suspension of reality that's important. It's about the rule playing within it. It's about how you bend or break the rules. It's about how you apply previous knowledge. It's about how you engage with the narrative. It's about all of the things that games actually represent from the real world. And I'll quote Graham Brown Martin, who's downstairs at the moment. He doesn't know I'm quoting him. But the thing is, he says, when we play games, we rapidly solve abstract problems in real time while being continually assessed and often working collaboratively. This was in January this year, so this is only a week or 2 old. And I think this is a very profound statement, because it tells you the very reasons why games are going to be important in learning in the next few years. I'll let that sink in for a few seconds. And Liz Corcoran said something else. She said she was very skeptical about this. Gamification is creating an expectation among people that real-life interactions follow simple mechanics, and some disillusionment may when they do not. So she's warning against it. And I think it's a valid point, but I think the benefits of gaming actually outweigh the detriment of it. So you make your own mind up whether some of you may already be using games, but games are easy to create as well as find. My 16-year-old son, he's doing a games design course at the moment. He's just created his first 2-dimensional game. And it runs. It works perfectly. It's got several levels on it. It gets more difficult as you go through it, and you start to have to think about problems. and now he's about to create his first three-dimensional game. So the tools are out there to do this. It's about the time and about the imagination that you can invest into it to create really useful learning objects, I think. That's the important question for all of us. Social media and learning. You heard Joe and Lania this morning talking about the caveats to this, but I'm going to champion social media and say to you, look, the possibilities are endless. I'm using Twitter and Facebook and Blogger and WordPress and all sorts of other tools with my students at the moment in Plymouth, and we're seeing incredible results because they are engaging, they are owning the spaces that they are populating, and they are having to go away and independently research what they need to find out and then present it. And when you present it in any format, whether it's speaking like this or whether it's on a blog or a podcast or a video, you really have to know your stuff if you're going to be in front of an audience, because they're going to throw questions at you, and we encourage our students to throw questions at each other. We create the bear pits for them, and so they have to think critically, they have to go deeper into the knowledge, and they have to use these tools to learn from. So I see that happening a lot more as well. And all right, to counteract what Jaron said this morning, the wisdom of the crowds, okay, there is the stupidity of the mobs as well, but the wisdom of the crowds seems to be what's happening on things like Wikipedia and other repository tools out there where knowledge is being gathered and aggregated together. You've got all these tools to be able to do that with. You can vote on things to bring them up and down in the search list, Dig and various other tools actually allow you to do this. But ultimately, it's all going to come out as user-generated content, which can then be used by other people and shared and repurposed. Twitter, well, there's several things about Twitter that are important. You can use Twitter as a library because there's a lot of content out there now. People actually tweet links as well, remember, and links actually take you to other things which are really a treasure trove in some cases. I found some great stuff on Twitter from people that I followed who have shared something, whether it's a blog post or a Wikipedia article or whatever. But it's also a street corner. It's a gossip chamber. But you can find out things on Twitter that you wouldn't have known any other way, especially breaking news from somewhere in the world. And it's also a soapbox. People can use it as a rant. People can, use it as a broadcast channel. And there are people that you can follow who do nothing but send stuff out there. Now, some people, that's not appealing to them. There's a whole bunch of dead philosophers at the moment. Have you seen them out there tweeting? Foucault and I don't know, Baudrillard and Illich and Freire and all the others. They've all got things. They all have things to say about education and about training and learning. But they're all dead now. But there are people out there who have taken on the mantle of retweeting a lot of the stuff that they wrote, so that it's in bite-sized chunks. That, to me, I think is quite an interesting concept. And finally, when you retweet something, it's not repetition, it's amplification. So people who are tweeting here right now, there may be other people elsewhere in the world who are following you. So Denise down here, you might be tweeting something, yeah? And you're tweeting stuff as well. Other people are actually probably retweeting it and amplifying it to their followers as well. Before you know it, it becomes viral. So there are ways of getting your message out there to maybe learners who are who you never meet. So it can be an amplification tool as well. I'm going to press on because I've got other things to talk about here. This is what my students said about Twitter. I'm going to share these slides later on. But essentially, the guy at the bottom here says, Twitter has opened a wealth of opportunities and information I never even knew existed. To be honest, I might have to blog now. And he did. He wrote a blog. And that blog is now visited by many, many people around the world who are educators who are interested in his experience as a student teacher. And so it's opened up a whole new set of possibilities for this guy, John. And if you ever speak to John, he would actually say to you, it's changed my whole professional outlook. So it is transformational when it's used in the right way. There are ways of amplifying content, but there are also ways of aggregating it as well. We call these new ways digital curation. I wrote a piece on this in last year's Learning Technologies journal. I don't know if you saw it, Juan. And essentially what curation does is it allows you to gather stuff together which you think is interesting, but it allows you to annotate it as well, so you can add your own commentary to it. And I think that's a really important tool as well for the future. We've got to talk about open or closed content. We've got to talk about whether you're going to give stuff away for free, like the Creative Commons stuff, or whether you're going to hold on to it and charge for it. It's up to your own, I suppose, your business plan. It's up to your company's policies, I suppose. But if you're an independent trainer, it might be that you decide to give your stuff away for free, so that you open up a wider audience. I was treated like a heretic when I spoke at Zukunft Personal in Cologne in September, and all the people from Allianz and Deutsche Bank and Shell and BP and so on were there, and some of the CEOs were there as well, and they said to me, "How can you talk about us giving away our products for free, Steve? You know, this is ridiculous. We run business. We need to make a profit. We need to, to have a profit margin." And I said, think about Unity. Who's heard of Unity? Just as you've heard of Unity. Two maybe at the back, 3 or 4. Not many people have heard of Unity, but Unity is actually one of the biggest game engine manufacturers in the world. Most of the games that you see have been developed using Unity software. Now, up until last year, Unity actually sold their developers pack, the baseline developers pack, for $1,500. They made a decision last year to give it away for free. And what happened was quite incredible, because the 150,000 user base suddenly became 1 million developers, because it was free. They could download it for nothing. Here's the deal. Unity said to all the developers, "Look, we're giving you this for free, but if you create a game, we'll give you a free evaluation service and tell you what you can do to improve the game to make it marketable, and then when you're ready, we will market it for you worldwide through all of our distribution networks, and we'll take 20%. Smart thinking, isn't it? And that's the way I see things going in business as well. There are ways of bending that model to make it work for your own company, I'm sure. But you need to think about it, because that, to me, is another trend I see emerging. Then there's the idea of touch or no touch. I'm going to show you a video now, because in fact, 2 videos. The first one is this one here, which I'm going to just show you a few minutes of to give you an idea about what we might expect. All of this technology already exists, but it's not completely available to everybody yet because of things like cost and manufacturing and scalability and so on. But I'm going to show you this video to give you a flavor of what we might expect in terms of touch technology. Well, I'm going to stop there because I think that gives you a taste of what you might, if you want to see the rest of it. It's, I think, a 20-minute video. No, it's a 5-minute video, that's right. But there is a longer version of it somewhere. I'm going to go back to my slides and carry on. And we'll talk about another type of technology as well, the non-touch version. Xbox Connect is a game changer, if you think about it. Because what it's done is it's given us the ability to do stuff with both gesture, natural gesture, and also with voice command, which we couldn't do otherwise. Are we about to see the death of the mouse and the keyboard, I wonder? I gave a TV interview not so long back, just before Christmas. I wonder if Sarah and Les are here from Mounts Bay School. Are they here? No, they're probably downstairs, but last year they were one of the few schools in the country at that point that actually brought in iPads for every one of their children in the school. They funded it centrally from their budgets. And there was a huge outcry about it, saying this is a gimmick, this is not going to happen, this is ridiculous, this is a waste of money, public taxpayers' money, etc., etc. And they asked me to come onto the programme to talk about my view as a so-called expert on ICT. And I said, well, you know, they said, is this innovative? And I said, no, other schools are doing it already. So firstly, it's not innovative in that sense, but it is part of the future, because what it's doing is it's giving children and young people the ability to engage physically and tactilely and haptically, if you like, which is the sense of pressure and resistance. All these senses are being engaged as they learn. And it's intuitive as well. And what happens there is that you don't have to worry about learning how to use the tools in front of you. It's completely transparent. You just do it because it's there and it's intuitive. I said, but that's not the future. That's part of the future. The future also is when your grandchildren sit on your knee and say, Granddad, did you really have to touch a computer to make it work? And so there are two possible futures here. And I'm going to talk to you in a minute about this one here. I'll show you a video. You've probably seen this already, some of you. Who's actually seen the Sixth Sense video? Not as many as I thought, actually, so that's good. So this hopefully will be another little kind of revelation for some of you. This actually took place, I think, about 2 years ago, the first TED Talk. But this is a new talk by Prahlad Mistry, who's the guy who created it. Did we use 2009. That was the original one by Patty Mace, but this was a more recent one where he's actually developed it further. And I just wanted to show you a little bit of this. So this is the guy himself talking.
You can carry your digital world with you wherever you go with you. You can start using any surface, any wall around you as an interface. The camera is actually tracking all your gestures. Whatever you are doing with your hands is understanding that gesture. And actually, if you see, there are some color markers that in the beginning version we were using over there. You can start painting on any wall, that you stop by a wall and start painting on that wall. But we are not only tracking here one finger. We are giving you the freedom of using all the both of hands. So you actually can use both of your hands to zoom into or zoom out a map just by pinching operation over here. The camera is actually doing just getting all the images, it's doing the age recognition and also the color recognition, and like so many small algorithms are going inside. So technically it's a little bit so complex, but it gives you an output which is more intuitive to use in some sense. But I'm more excited that you can actually take it outside. Rather than getting your camera out of your pocket, you can just do the gesture of taking a photo and it takes photo for you. Right? Thank you. And later I can find a wall, anywhere a wall, and start browsing these photos. Or maybe, okay, I want to modify this photo a little bit and send it as an email to a friend. So we are looking for an era where computing will actually merge with the physical world. And of course, if you don't have any surface, you can start using your palm for simple operation. I'm here dialing a phone number just using my hand. Yep. The camera is actually not only understanding your hand movements, but interestingly, it's also able to understand what objects you are holding in your hand. What we are doing here is actually, for example, in this case, the book cover is matched with so many thousands or maybe millions of books online and checking out which book it is. Once it has that information, it finds out more reviews about that, or maybe New York Times had a sound overview on that, so you can actually hear on a physical book as a review of a sound.
A famous talk at Harvard University.
This was Obama's last visit last week to MIT.
And in particular, I want to thank two outstanding MIT.
So I was seeing a live of his talk outside in just a newspaper. Your newspaper will show you live of your weather information rather than having updated like you have to check your computer in order to do that, right? When I'm going back, I can just use my boarding pass and to check, oh, my flight has been how much delayed. Because at that particular time, I'm not feeling of opening my iPhone and checking out a particular icon. And I think this technology will not only change the way, yes, it will change the way we interact with people also, not only the physical world. The fun part is like I'm going to Boston Metro and playing Pong game inside the train on the ground, right? And I think the imagination is the only limit of what you can think of when this kind of technology merging with the real life. But many of you argue actually that all of our work is not only...
Okay, again, that's another video you can watch at your leisure. It's Sixth Sense with Pranav Mystery. These are kind of two alternative futures, perhaps. It's where web meets world, I think. It's where you've got applications and natural gestures, and you're actually interacting with real objects. It's about what we call the Internet of Things, I suppose, as well, in that sense. In 2008, the number of things connected to the Internet exceeded the number of people on the planet. Now, that's exponential from there. The whole point about the Internet of Things is that suddenly we're seeing computer technology embedded into objects. So, for instance, you already know about this one at the checkout. If you don't want to queue at the ordinary checkout and speak to a human being, you can do it with a computer, and it will scan all the barcodes. That's an easy one to remember. Another one is this one here, which is the smart fridge. It will connect to the internet, and it will actually scan all of your products by barcode and tell you when your milk's out of date and when you need to get rid of it, and it will actually order new milk for you. So, you know, this is the kind of the automated kind of Internet of Things that we're talking about. Even cows. Apparently there's a herd of Frisians in Denmark that have all been tagged, and each of them sends around about 20 megabytes of information to the farmer's computer every year on their health and on the status of the amount of fat ratio and so on. So in effect, the farmer has an automatic herd. And one final one, obviously the smart car will tell you all sorts of information about its I suppose its efficiency and so on, how many miles it's done and what the miles per gallon are. So all of these things really are part of what's coming in the future. Whether we like it or not, it's happening. These are all things that are happening now. And then possibly the idea that email and social media might converge as well. What's the best thing about email? What's the best thing about social media? We'll bring them together, and that's probably what we'll be seeing in the future too. And we need to look at learners, obviously, in the midst of all this, because we're talking about technology, but it's about learning. That's the important thing. Technology is the tool. It's the medium that gets us there. We're seeing learners being more self-directed and better equipped. But we're also seeing them becoming more reliant on feedback from their peers rather than from the lecturers and from the trainers in some ways. They are looking to collaborate more with each other because they can see the reasons why they need to collaborate, the benefits of it. But also, they see themselves as producers now as well as consumers of information, as well as consumers of content. They're becoming people who create that content. And I'm sure you're seeing that as a trend with your own learners. We need to pay attention to this, because if we ignore it, we're going to miss a huge potential to transform learning in the future. They need more than that. That's the thing. They need more than this. They need other things. I like this. You go onto Wikipedia and you don't read everything. You don't believe everything you read. But some students do, I'm afraid. They need the digital wisdom. They need the discernment to detect the good from the bad, the factual from the untruthful or the spurious. They also need other types of wisdom as well. I show my students this. I say, what's wrong with it? And some of the first years they go, ooh, is it 70%? And some of them say, that's not a picture of Thomas Edison, is it? And yes, it is. You know, and then they realised that Thomas Edison died years before the internet was even created. You know, so you've got to think about the idea of digital literacies as well. The idea that there's a huge amount of stuff that's out there which we cannot swallow whole. Managing your identity, falling out of a pub at 3 o'clock in the morning and being filmed, that's one thing. But having it on Facebook, and then years later when you go for a job, the managing director looks up your Facebook account and finds pictures of you absolutely covered in vomit and paralytic and wonders whether he should even give you an interview. This stuff is out there permanently, and we need students and learners to realise that you cannot get rid of stuff once it's there. So please don't post it in the first place. So they need the idea of e-safety and the idea of managing their digital identity as well. These are all what I call literacies. They're not just skills. And I've shown this picture of the car here because this is a picture of driving in America. Now, I learned to drive in the UK, so I learned skills of how to drive in the UK. All right? And my skills are that, you know, I can change gear when I have to, and I can stop and start, I can do the mirror signal maneuver stuff. You know, I know near enough where my car is in relation to other cars. That's a skill. When I go to America to drive, I need another set of skills which takes me deeper. It's in fact a literacy. Because I need to learn, obviously, that I have to drive on the right-hand side of the road instead of the left. I need to go, if there are any roundabouts there, which there aren't, I need to go around the other side of them. If I come to a junction and there's other cars already there, they have to go first, and I need to learn how to read the road signs, etc., etc. These are literacies because they take you deeper than the skill into an immersion and an involvement directly with the culture that you're in. And that's what we need students and learners to know about. So they need to go beyond the skills into the literacies. And here's some of the literacies that I've identified. I won't labour them now. You can look these up on the slide set afterwards. But that's just a few of them. And that's not exhaustive either. There are many, many others as well. And finally, this is a quote from Socrates. Actually, no, sorry, there's a mistake there. It's Plato, in fact. All right. Yeah, that's the other Socrates. So there's a picture of, that's Socrates. No, hang on. This Plato. Right, okay, I've got it right now. Really, essentially what we've got here is Darwinianism going. We've got survival of the fittest content, right? And this is what you see happening. It's going to happen more. There's going to be more evolution of content, and it's going to be connected together more as well in an intelligent way. So the content that you read out there will take you to other things, and it will allow you to do other things as well, which you haven't been able to do before. And here's one of the reasons why Wikipedia is becoming more accurate. And this is something for Jared. Jared probably knows about this already, but the idea is that they're now crowdsourcing evaluation on it. They're asking you to judge it on each page in terms of its trustworthiness, objectivity, how complete it is, how well written it is, and then they're asking you to say how highly knowledgeable you are, how competent you are to make that judgment. And then obviously the analytics for that are going through to find out how good that page is. So that's all for now, I think. So I'm going to stop there and say thank you very much. We've got time for questions, I think. Thank you.
Has anyone got a question? Oh, yes.
I've seen things on the internet great in terms of gathering data and things like that. What I see less of is how you analyse data, understand it, and apply what you call in the kind of the literacy side. And I'm thinking of things like, I don't know, the MMR scale or something like that, where there were a lot of people who believed something to be true, but didn't necessarily have the skills to analyse what that data was actually telling us, etc. Where does that come in all of this? Where do you acquire those kind of skills?
It's a big problem, isn't it? Because disinformation it spreads much more quickly. As I say, a lie spreads much more quickly than truth. While truth is still getting its trousers on, lies gone around the world once, at least. And it's a problem because people want to believe in conspiracy theories. They want to believe in outrageous things. I'm not sure what the answer is, other than better education, better training. And the only way that can happen is if people like you and I are on board with what we can do with these tools and how we can bend them and harness them and shape them into what we want happening. we're always going to fight this disinformation problem wherever we are in the world, and with every different subject as well. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but we need to be on board at least, so that we know the possibilities. Down here?
How do you engage older adults in all these changes and empower them to be full citizens?
Did you hear that at the back? How do we engage older adults in all this?
Now, you see, right at the start of this, I'm going to have to answer this question by saying I don't believe, and there is no credence in the digital natives and immigrants theory, which Prensky originally proposed, where older people are supposed to be less able to use computers and technology than younger people because they weren't as immersed in it. So that's a fallacy. He's actually retracted that, and we must also ignore that theory now. It doesn't work anymore. But there are other theories which I think are much better. So David White's theory, Oxford University, he came up with a theory of digital residents and visitors, meaning the residents are people who use the technology habitually and therefore they are much more able to use it effectively, whereas the visitors use it casually and therefore they may need to keep relearning. Okay? So that's one issue, I think. You have to habituate people into using it, and to actually habituate them, to get them convinced that they must use something, you have to show them the functionality of it and the utility of it. In other words, you have to show them that it can benefit them. That's part of the battle, and I think that should give you part of the solution towards engaging older people. If they see that it can benefit them, they'll make an effort to use it. My father is 83. He got onto Facebook just before Christmas, you know, and I was disconcerted because last week he actually lolled. No, that means he's starting to assimilate the culture. Yeah, it doesn't matter how old or how young you are. What it matters is what you see it being useful for.
What do you think that all this equipment does to the psychology of a person? How does it impact on us as people?
I see a continuum. Because I'm a psychologist myself, I'm really interested in that question. It's a really good question. I see a continuum between what I call the e-pathologies. And you can quote me on that if you like. E-pathology for me is the extreme ends of the spectrum. At one end you've got severe computer dependency. And at the other end you've got technophobia. And in the middle most of us hover and we kind of depend on the context. We move one way or the other. My daughter was, when she was 18 last year, she dropped her mobile phone and it smashed. She went into mourning for 3 days. And I said, what's wrong with you? We get on the mobile phone. She said, but the problem is that I've lost all my friends. I've lost all my friends. She was in tears. She was wearing black, I said, what? You haven't lost your friends. You've lost your phone. She said, but all my friends are on my phone. I said, no, they're not. And she, you had to try and put her away from the idea that her friends were in her mobile phone. They aren't. Her friends are in a chip that's on the mobile phone, but that's not her real friends. Her real friends are the people she talks to every day. So I think we have to keep moving away from technology occasionally and stepping back into the real world if we're getting too absorbed with it, and actually kind of stepping away from the dependency that we could develop if we weren't careful. So there is always a danger for being to be dependent on technology, just as there is a danger of running away from it because you've had a bad experience. But somewhere in the middle, most of us sensibly sit, and we will adjust our behaviour accordingly, I think.
Last question then.
Yeah.
What do you feel about the idea of social media and social websites making us less social because we're not talking to the people around us?
I think that's a fallacy as well, because if you look at any average teenager or young 20, they will be engaged with Facebook and they'll be engaged on Twitter or whatever it is that they're using to talk to their friends, but they'll also see them as well socially. Generally, if they're living in the same locale, they will go to work or to school with them and so on. So they'll be talking to each other and then they'll be talking to each other again in a different way. What I'm seeing happening and emerging is the property of different types of literacy, communication literacies happening. So they will learn how to text, SMS texting, as a different way of creating the connection to a face-to-face communication, as a different way to a Skype, as a different way to a Facebook update or whatever. They'll use all the tools together in sequence, but they'll use them in different ways to connect in the same way. That's what I see happening.
A fascinating session with Steve Wheeler as usual. Round of applause.